The sun burned like fire over Ouagadougou. The streets shimmered in heat, cracked, dusty, alive. Vendors shouted like the city's heartbeat. Horns screamed. Motorbikes weaved through chaos. Children ran barefoot between cars, carrying their worlds in baskets. But amid the noise and madness, one car moved quietly. No sirens, no convoy, just a driver, two aides, and President Ibrahim Traoré in the back seat. A man who believed power should never hide behind glass. Soft instrumental swells. He often told his team, if a leader forgets the dust he came from. He no longer leads people, he rules them. As the car stopped at a red light, Ibrahim's gaze shifted. Through the blur of traffic he saw a small figure, a little girl, maybe 8. Her dress was worn thin by the sun. One sandal dangled, the other long gone. In her tiny hands, a tray of peanuts and candies, arranged neatly, lovingly, as if each one were gold. She pushed through the crowd, trembling, eyes darting toward the black car and its guards. Hunger gave her courage. She took a deep breath and whispered, "Please, sir. Would you like to buy something?" A guard lowered the window halfway, his hand ready to wave her away, like she was just another street noise. But Ibrahim raised his hand. Let her come. The window rolled down completely. For a moment, time stopped. The little girl froze, her breath catching. The man inside was not just another passenger. It was the president, the same face she had only seen on a dusty shop TV. He looked at her, not with power, but with warmth. "How much are the peanuts?" he asked softly. 50 francs, sir," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. He smiled, took one packet with care, and placed in her hand a note worth 10 times more. Her eyes widened. Disbelief flickered. Then gratitude. Before she could speak, Ibrahim leaned forward, his tone calm but firm. "Turn into the next street," he told the driver. Then to his aide, "Bring her with us." The guards exchanged nervous glances. "Excellency." "That's not protocol." Narrator, lower suspenseful tone. But what happened next would change their idea of protocol forever. Music fades to silence. Screen lingers on the girl's face. Half fear, half hope. Soft music fades in, gentle chorus strings. The kind that sound like memory and prayer. Narrator, calm. Emotional tone. "Protocol can wait," Ibrahim said firmly. "This child cannot." The guards hesitated, but the conviction in his voice silenced argument. The little girl clutched her tray tighter, her eyes darting between them, unsure if kindness was safe. Ibrahim leaned closer, his tone softening. "Don't be afraid, little one. I only want to talk to you." Her chest rose and fell, fast and uneven. Then after a pause that felt like forever, she stepped forward, one trembling foot, then the other, and climbed inside. The door closed. The noise of the city faded into distant echoes. Only the soft hum of the engine remained, and the sound of her quick, frightened breathing. Inside the car, the world felt different and quiet, cold. Clean. The cool air brushed her skin, but her body stayed stiff, as if she had entered a palace where she didn't belong. The tray of peanuts trembled in her lap. Her treasure, her shield, her world. Ibrahim leaned forward, his voice low and gentle. "What's your name?" She hesitated. Her lips barely moved. "Awa." He smiled, the kind of smile that made fear lose its power. "Awa. That's a beautiful name. How old are you?" 8, she whispered. He paused. The weight of that number hit him harder than any report on his desk ever could. 8. And already carrying the burden of survival. "Do you sell peanuts every day?" She nodded, eyes down. "Yes, sir. I must help my father." Silence. It stretched, not awkward, but deep. The kind of silence that listens. Finally, her small voice returned, fragile, trembling. "My father used to drive a taxi," she said softly. "But after the accident, he can't move his legs. Mama's gone, so now it's just us. I sell to buy food and pay what we can." Her eyes turned away quickly, as if ashamed of speaking truth. Narrator, quietly. Ibrahim's chest tightened. He had read about poverty, graphs, data, endless reports, but none of them had ever looked him in the eyes like this. A child, explaining hardship with the calm tone of an adult. because pain had stolen her childhood too soon. He spoke again, his voice almost a whisper. "Do you like school, Awa?" Something flickered, a spark of light behind tired eyes. "I did. I liked it a lot, especially drawing, but I stopped after Mama died. I must stay with Papa. We need money." Her hands pressed tighter on the tray. The air grew heavier, like the car itself could feel her sorrow. Ibrahim's voice deepened. He reached out, resting a steady hand on her shoulder. Not as a president, but as a father would. "Awa, you deserve to be a child, to learn, to dream, to laugh, not to carry the world on your shoulders. That is your right." His tone grew stronger, filled with quiet fire. "You will return to school, and your father will not be left behind." Awa's eyes lifted, a mix of disbelief and fragile hope trembling in them. "Why would you help me?" She whispered. Narrator pauses, then softly, and in that question, the purest one a child could ask, the entire car fell silent. Because sometimes it's not power that answers, but the heart of a man who remembers what it means to be human. Music swells slowly. The faint sound of children laughing fades in the distance. Soft piano fades in, solemn, hopeful. The sound of children faintly laughing echoes under the music. Narrator, gentle, cinematic tone. Ibrahim looked at the little girl, her eyes wide, her hands trembling around the tray that had carried her world. "Because your life matters," he said softly, "and because children like you are the future of Burkina Faso." For a moment, the car fell silent again, but this time it was not out of fear. It was because hope had entered. Awa's lips quivered. Her eyes filled, but she refused to let the tears fall. And for the first time, she looked at him not as a stranger of power, but as someone who saw her. The car looped back toward the corner where she had once stood in the dust. Ibrahim reached into a small leather bag beside him. He pulled out a notebook, crisp, clean, smelling of paper and promise, and a box of colored pencils, still sharp and bright like tiny beams of light. He placed them gently in her lap. "Start writing your dreams, Awa," he said. "Draw them. Keep them alive. We will make them come true." Her tiny fingers brushed over the smooth cover, then touched each pencil. Red, blue, yellow, as if they were treasures dug from the earth. A shy smile crept across her face. It was small, but it carried all the sunrise the world needed. Narrator, softly. And there, in the quiet hum of a car surrounded by chaos, a promise was born. Not the kind signed in offices, but the kind sealed by heart. Scene transition, soft fade into the presidential palace. The music deepens, slow drums and strings. Back inside the palace, cold air drifted from the vents. The marble shone. The silence was perfect, but Ibrahim felt none of it. He sat alone, eyes fixed on the floor, Awa's words echoing like a prayer he could not forget. "Mama is gone. Papa cannot walk." He had read poverty reports for years. He had seen charts, graphs, numbers. But now every number had a face, every statistic had a voice, Awa's voice. If his promise meant anything, it could not wait for committees or signatures. It had to live. That evening, under the pale glow of chandeliers, the ministers gathered around the long mahogany table, expecting another routine meeting. But the moment Ibrahim spoke, the air shifted. "Today," he began slowly, "I met a child." His tone carried no politics, only truth. "Her name is Awa. She is 8 years old. She sells peanuts on the street because her mother is gone. And her father cannot walk. She no longer goes to school." He paused, his voice low, steady, cutting through the silence like a blade. "And she is not alone. Thousands of our children are living the same story." The ministers looked at him, some uneasy, some ashamed. "This must change," he said, rising to his feet. "Not tomorrow, not next year, now." Music swells, the beat of drums like a rising heartbeat, signaling transformation. Narrator, emotional close. That night, a government plan began to shift, not from power but from compassion. And somewhere in Ouagadougou, a little girl named Awa opened her notebook, and for the first time in her life, began to draw her future. Music fades out with soft children's laughter and the hum of city night. Heavy drums fade in, low, tense like a heartbeat before a storm. The palace glows gold under the evening light. Narrator, steady, powerful tone. The room grew stiff, not from heat, but from truth. Ministers shifted uneasily in their seats. A cough broke the silence. "Excellency," one of them began carefully. "With respect. These matters are complicated. Budgets are—" A soft thud, Ibrahim's palm touched the table. Not loud, but firm. The sound alone silenced the room. His eyes swept slowly across the men who ruled the nation beside him. "Do not give me excuses," he said quietly. "Give me truth." The words struck harder than any shout could. "I want to know how many children are out of school. And why? Not in 6 months, not in 3, 2 weeks. He leaned forward, his voice low but sharp as a blade. "And I don't want paperwork, I want solutions." No one dared speak again. Because in that moment, every man in the room remembered. This was not just a president speaking. It was a man who had seen the face of hunger. Soft instrumental builds, strings and drums begin to narrator somber tone. 2 weeks later, his desk overflowed with files, reports stacked high like walls of forgotten stories. He opened them one by one, each line heavier than the last. Tens of thousands of children. Never in school, some selling peanuts, some selling maize, some working in metal workshops. Their hands too small for the tools, and others simply gone, lost in the shadows of poverty. He stared at the papers, but papers were just ink. He needed truth in flesh and bone. Scene cuts, sounds of city traffic, distant drums. So once again, Ibrahim left behind the armored convoy. No cameras, no speeches, no guards with rifles. He walked through the alleys of Ouagadougou, narrow, broken roads lined with tin roofs and tired eyes. He traveled far, to villages that maps had forgotten. He sat cross-legged, on straw mats in homes where 5 people shared one. But he touched cracked bowls, empty yet treated with reverence, because even emptiness had meaning here. He listened into the silence where laughter should have lived. Soft flute joins the background, sorrowful, human. In one dusty courtyard under a dying tree, he met an old woman named Fatou. She lay on a mat, breath shallow, bones sharp against thin skin. Beside her, her granddaughter roasted maize on a rusty pan, trying to keep them alive. "Every day my heart breaks," Fatou whispered, her voice trembling like her hands. "She should be in school, but what choice do we have?" Tears slid down her wrinkled cheeks, as slow and painful as the years that shaped them. Ibrahim stepped outside. The sun scorched the ground beneath his shoes. He clenched his fists, his chest tight with helpless rage. "What choice do we have?" The words echoed, not just in his mind, but in the air, the soil, the sky itself. And in that moment, he understood. This was not about classrooms. It was about survival, the right to exist with dignity, the right to dream without hunger. Music swells, hope rising under the pain. Back at the palace, as night fell over the city, Ibrahim called his ministers once again. But this time, he wasn't asking questions, he was bringing answers. Camera fades, the door of the meeting. Room closes as the music builds toward transformation. Deep orchestral hum builds. Under soft choral voices, the kind that sound like dawn breaking after a long night. Narrator, calm, resolute tone. This time, Ibrahim's voice carried no hesitation, no pause, no fear of protocol. He stood before his ministers, not as a politician, but as a man who had seen truth in the dust. "Half measures will change nothing," he said. Pacing slowly before the long polished table, "We must strike at the roots." He pointed at the mountain of reports sprawled across the wood, the paperwork of pain, food. "First, no child can learn on an empty stomach," his voice deepened. "Support for disabled parents, wheelchairs, ramps, therapy, dignity restored, and stipends, so that families who keep their children in school are not punished by poverty. They will be supported." A minister shifted nervously in his seat. "Excellency," he began cautiously. "The scale is enormous. Even with foreign aid, the budget." Before the words could finish, Ibrahim's hand pressed flat against the table. a single, steady motion that silenced everything. His tone dropped, calm, yet it rolled through the chamber like thunder. "Scale is no excuse," he said. "Every day we delay, another child lays down a dream." He paused, eyes hard with conviction. "Children are not numbers, they are futures, and we cannot afford to lose any more." The room went still. "No," one argued again. Soft instrumental rises, strings, carrying warmth and weight. That day, instead of charts and graphs, Ibrahim carried Awa's story. He spoke of her small hands clutching a tray of peanuts, of her father lying helpless on a low wooden bed, of a school uniform folded away because hope no longer. Vidi and the world listened. Funds began to flow. At volunteers signed up, experts flew in from across Africa. What began as one child's struggle became a movement that crossed borders. But for Ibrahim, the headlines meant nothing, because for him, it had never been about programs. It was about her, about Awa. Scene shift, sounds of a busy market, laughter and sizzling maize. The music turns gentle, human. 3 weeks later, under the soft light of morning, Ibrahim returned to her neighborhood. No cameras, no banners, just a small convoy. Social workers, rehabilitation staff, and crates of supplies. The alley smelled of smoke and roasted maize. Children peeked from doorways, whispering in awe. The president. He came back. Inside a one-room home, Awa's father sat on a low wooden bed, his legs still weak, but his spirit alert, eyes filled with disbelief. When he saw Ibrahim step inside, his hands gripped the bed frame as if to rise, but Ibrahim moved forward quickly, laying a firm hand on his shoulder. "Please," he said softly, "don't strain. You've already carried enough." The man's voice broke, a sound heavy with years of silence and pain. "Sir, since the accident and then my wife's death, Awa kept us alive. She became both daughter and mother in this house." Ibrahim's eyes softened. He shook his head gently. "You don't need to explain," he replied quietly. The music fades lower, strings whisper under his words. Narrator, warm tone, because in that room, surrounded by broken walls and a child's laughter echoing faintly from outside, Ibrahim knew. This was not charity, it was justice, the kind that restores dignity where the world had taken it away. Soft piano and ambient strings open, warm, glowing tones that carry quiet hope. Orator, gentle, emotional tone. "From today," Ibrahim said softly, "you are not alone." Across the small room, Awa sat hunched over a notebook he had given her weeks ago. Her fingers were smudged with pencil marks. She was drawing a tree. When she looked up and saw him, her eyes widened. But this time, there was no fear, only trust. Ibrahim knelt beside her, unwrapping a neatly folded school uniform and a backpack filled with notebooks. "Pens and colored pencils, these are yours," he said, smiling. "For the classroom where you belong." Her hands trembled as she clutched the fabric, holding it close, as if she were holding the key to a door she thought would never open again. Her father buried his face in his hands, tears falling freely. "Thank you, sir," he whispered. "I never thought anyone would come for us." Ibrahim turned to the rehab worker at the door. "Tomorrow we begin," he said firmly. "A wheelchair, a ramp, regular visits, meals, transport. Tutoring, this family will not be forgotten." Then he looked back at Awa. His voice softened. "Your only job now is to learn, to dream, and to grow. Leave the burdens to us." And in that small, crowded room, hope returned for the first time in years. Transition, gentle music grows brighter. Rhythmic drums like footsteps of change. A week later, the promise began to take shape. At Awa's home, a small team worked carefully. A rehab worker measuring the doorway, a caseworker crouched beside her father, the social worker taking notes. "The wheelchair will arrive tomorrow," one said. "Kindly physiotherapy twice a week, a social visit every Friday, and the monthly stipend is ready." Awa's father pressed his palms together, trembling. "It feels like a dream," he whispered. Outside, a yellow school bus waited, the words "School Route 3" painted along its side. Children leaned out of the windows, laughing, waving. calling each other's names. At the doorway, Awa hesitated. Her uniform was crisp. Her sandals new, her backpack hugged tight against her chest. But her eyes were uncertain. Ibrahim placed a steady hand on her father's shoulder. "You've carried her far enough," he said softly. "Now, let her walk toward her own future." Then he crouched in front of Awa, his red beret catching the sunlight. He smiled, the kind of smile that told her the world was waiting. "Climb aboard," he said gently. The bus door creaks open. Music swells, strings, children's laughter blending with the hum of the engine. As the bus rolled away, Awa leaned out of the window, waving, smiling. Her drawing notebook clutched to her heart. On the last page, that tree she drew had grown tall, its roots deep, its branches wide. Narrator, soft final line. And beneath its shade a nation began to heal. One child at a time. Fade out, soft music, lingering warmth. Screen slowly fades to black. Soft orchestral opening, hopeful strings blending with the faint hum of a school morning. Narrator, warm. Steady tone. "Your place," Ibrahim said, "is in the classroom." Awa turned to her father. He gave a trembling nod, pride shining through tired eyes. She took a deep breath. "I promise." "Sir," she whispered, and with that she stepped onto the bus. The door shut softly behind her, carrying her toward a new life. Music swells, gentle rhythm of drums. Children laughing faintly. Each morning felt like a second birth. The bus horn echoed through the narrow lane. And Awa would dash out, braids swinging, her father watching proudly from the doorway. At school, she sat quietly at the back, notebook open, eyes wide. When the teacher asked a math question, her hand lifted before she even realized it. "Correct?" the teacher smiled. The class turned. Surprised, Awa lowered her gaze, but a small smile bloomed on her lips. During breaks, she filled her notebook with drawings, baobab trees, busy markets, her father resting in sunlight. Soon, children began to crowd around her. "Draw my house!" one boy begged. "Make the river shine." Another laughed. Her hands, once rough from selling peanuts under the burning sun, were now creating worlds of color and hope. Soft piano joins, the sound of time passing gently. Weeks turned to months. The program spread beyond Ouagadougou, into faraway villages. Each home began to feel the change, one child at a time. One afternoon, Awa's teacher wrote a letter. "Awa has become a source of hope for this class. She shows us that with the right support, even the most fragile dream can take root and grow." When the letter reached Ibrahim, he read it twice. He looked out the palace window, the sky glowing red with sunset. The city buzzed with life, but his heart was still. "This," he murmured, "is why I chose to serve, and not for power, but for children like Awa." Music shifts, slow brass rise, cameras clicking, murmuring crowd sounds. The day of the national address arrived. Lights blazed. Cameras flashed, and the entire nation held its breath. Ibrahim stood at the podium. No medals, no grandeur, just a steady gaze. "The story of Awa," he began, "is not unique. It is the story of thousands of children across our land. No child should sell peanuts under the burning sun when they should be learning in a classroom. No parent, widowed, disabled, or struggling, should have to choose between medicine and education." Hush fell across Burkina Faso. Families leaned closer to their radios and TVs. Mothers held their children's hands tighter. Fathers nodded slowly, remembering their own battles. That night, the word spread like fire. A movement had begun. A story that started with one little girl was now awakening an entire nation. Soft closing music. The theme of hope returns. Stronger, brighter. Emotional orchestral music builds, strings rising. Slow heartbeat of drums underneath. Narrator, steady, heartfelt tone. Youth groups began to move, civil. Society leaders organized marches. Private companies opened scholarships. Old community halls, and once silent, filled again with the laughter of children, forgotten. Schools found new life, dusty. Courtyards echoed with recitations. The sound of hope returned to the land, but Ibrahim knew words were not enough. Trust had to be earned. Within weeks, a public tracking system appeared, showing every province, every coin, every child helped. Audits followed, and Ibrahim himself began walking the villages again, unannounced. Guarded, listening, learning, remembering. Music softens, gentle classroom sounds, children's voices reciting faintly. One quiet afternoon, he entered a small classroom in Bobo Dioulasso. The chalkboard was cracked, the benches worn, but sunlight streamed through broken shutters, dust dancing like gold in the air. At the back, a girl was sketching, head bent, brow furrowed in focus. "Awa," he said softly. Her head shot up, surprise, then joy. "Mr. President." "You came again!" He smiled, pulling up a stool beside her. "Of course. I wanted to see how my brightest student is doing. What are you working on?" She turned her notebook. A baobab tree stretched across the page, its roots deep, its branches wide. "We're learning about ecosystems," she said shyly. "I drew it so I remember." Ibrahim nodded slowly. "You've captured more than a tree. Awa, you've captured its strength. Do you know what the baobab is sometimes called?" Her eyes lit up. "The tree of life." "Exactly," he smiled. "Because like you, it gives more than it takes." She giggled softly, then whispered, "They always ask me for help now. Math, reading, sometimes even drawing." Her teacher, standing nearby, smiled proudly. "She's become a leader, first to arrive, last to leave." Ibrahim looked at her, eyes warm. "And how does it feel?" "Helping them?" Awa thought for a moment. "It feels good. Before, I was always behind. But now I know what it feels like when someone believes in you. I want others to feel it too." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Keep going. Fwa, you're not just the future, you're already shaping it." Her smile grew wide. "I won't stop. Sir, I promise." Music swells. Sunlight. Hope and wind through trees, outside. The sky was wide and golden. Ibrahim paused beside his car, looking down the long, dusty road, disappearing into the horizon. There would be setbacks, resistance, doubt, but her words, her promise, echoed louder than any speech. Awa's story was no longer just hers. It had become a spark, a movement, a flame that would outlive them both. Narrator, closing voice, gentle but strong. This story reminds us change doesn't begin with speeches or power. It begins with courage to face truth and heart to act for the voiceless. One child's cry can awaken a leader, and one leader's action can transform a nation. Music fades into soft piano outro. If this story touched you, like, subscribe, and share, because together, we can spread stories that inspire real change.